Hi, I'm Manda McKay. I'm a professional artist, and I'm making these videos to give practical, simple tips to help you enhance your creativity, and this will work for anybody regardless of their level of expertise. Today I'm going to talk about the only tip that I received in art school, and it's a pretty decent tip, but it's know the rules so that you can break them. So I'm going to back up a little bit and tell you I'm not a self-taught artist. My undergraduate degree is in scientific illustration from the University of Georgia, which did and still does have a really respected art program. And then I also have a Master of Science in medical illustration from the Medical College of Georgia. And this, like I said, this is the only creativity tip that I received in all of that schooling. To be fair, these programs were very technique heavy, very focused on how well you could draw or paint, and I think there was also an assumption that if you had made it to this point to be in these more advanced programs, then you probably already understood creativity, and maybe they just didn't know any tips to give us. But know the rules so that you can break them. That is actually a pretty good tip. And I've used it a lot, and I would say I know a lot of rules about drawing and painting and photography because of all of my schooling. But what if you haven't studied? What if you're just starting out with some hobby and you know nothing about it? Then what do you do? So you have a couple of options here, and the obvious thing is, well, to do some self-study or even sign up for some kind of a program, a structured program, and that's great. But I honestly don't think that you have to go that far. I think that for the most part, whatever it is that you're working in, there's probably some rules that are very, very obvious, and you would know these without taking any special study, and therefore know how to break them. And I'll give you an example. I'm predominantly an oil painter, and yes, I studied all sorts of rules, like how to show lighting, like reflected light, highlights, specular highlights, color theory, composition, all of that. But really, I would say the main rule that I break is something that you would need no schooling at all to come up with. I paint still lifes of assembled natural objects, and I like for it to be unusual combinations that you wouldn't see out in the real world. For example, if I were to paint a butterfly, I wouldn't just paint it on a flower, because you've probably seen a lot of times a butterfly on a flower, so there's nothing unusual about that. So instead, I might have the butterfly on a seashell, or a bone, or a deer antler, or something like that. And can you see how I don't need any kind of art schooling to know what would be an unusual thing to see a butterfly perched upon? I just have observed butterflies throughout my time that I've spent here on Earth, and I know enough just from that to know that if I want to break the rule, and the whole reason that I'm breaking this rule is to have something more unusual and eye-catching. People have, if I did a painting of a butterfly on a flower, people might be more likely to overlook it than if that butterfly is on something unusual like a fossil seashell, which is what I'm painting right now. But can you see how I don't need my fancy degrees to know what would be kind of weird and unusual to show the butterfly perched upon? So again, this is breaking a rule, and I do know this rule, but I just didn't really have to study anything. I just had to observe things throughout my life. And so most people will understand that that's unusual whether or not they have studied painting. If you do study and you come up with something really obscure, that's good too. Some obscure rule to break, that's good too. But be aware that it will quite probably be an in-joke to other people who also have done the advanced level of study. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it'll basically be perhaps an in-joke. My husband is a professional musician, and just from being around him, I would say that as far as somebody who has no musical talent myself, I think that I have a pretty good understanding of music for somebody who has never studied it. But he will occasionally throw in basically what are in-jokes in his music, and the in-jokes go right over my head. He's breaking some kind of a rule, but I don't even know what that rule is. So as far as it being some kind of a joke, it just goes right over my head. Now, if somebody's listening to the song and they've also know a lot about music, then they would get it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to have it where only certain people are going to understand that you've broken a rule. This channel is all about enhancing your creativity. And I say in almost every video that creativity is something that you get better at through practice. And so just by thinking about, well, what rules do I know of that I could potentially break? Whether or not you break them, this is going to help you just become better at creative thinking. And also looking at, have you already done some kind of artwork or written a song or whatever where you did this, whether intentionally or unintentionally, but you just kind of on some level understood that here's a rule and I'm going to break it in this way. So just thinking about that, how you have or how you could break the rules, whether or not you implement that, is going to help enhance your creativity. And now if you really don't know any of the rules at all about whatever you're working in, that might not be something to get rid of right away, because then you might come up with something really, really radical if you just have no idea what the rules are. Might be something just completely unexpected. Of course, I really do think that's kind of difficult to just be so much of an outsider and so naive about something that you would be working in that would happen. But it is something to consider before you start learning. If you really feel like you don't know any rules, maybe give yourself a chance to come up with stuff before you know what the rules are. So of course, if you want to go into additional study about your particular type of art, that's going to be good too. So just think about this. How could you break a rule with your art? How have you broken a rule? Does this help you come up with any really good ideas? Or even if not, does it lead you down some different paths that you might not have thought of otherwise? So let me know in the comments, have you ever done this? What are some rules that you know of that you could potentially break? Or do you think that this one and only creativity tip that I got, do you think it's not very useful? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to have a discussion about this. And again, my name is Manda McKay, and I hope you found this tip to be helpful. And thank you again for watching.